EA Sports has released their team rankings for the upcoming college football game, and surprisingly, they were pretty friendly to Clemson Tigers.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. I'm your host, John Bivens. You can follow us over on X at I am John Bivens. Thanks for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Here on the Locked On Clemson podcast, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, all passion, all of the time, where we are bringing you everything you need to know regarding the Clemson Tigers and athletics at Clemson University. Today is Monday, July 8th. I'm sorry for the long hiatus, but today we're going to get back into it with EA rankings. They released their team rankings for offense, defense, and overall team rankings for the upcoming game this year, and were pretty friendly to the Clemson Tigers. We're also talking about Wake Forest and the recap of that game from last year, and finally, we're going to give our thoughts on PJ Hall to the Nuggets. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And so, hey, before we dive in, we want to say this, though. Hey, if you did notice, we tried to upgrade our setup here. We got some different lighting, so hopefully you see less of a glare. Got a different camera, so hopefully it's a little better quality for our video audience for both our lighting and camera. Upgrading our video audience, audio audience. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere like that, hopefully you're hearing great quality there. Microphone's still working out for you, but yeah, we just wanted to upgrade a little bit. We're so appreciative of all of you. We were on the road to 900 subscribers, and because of all of you, we have hit that goal. We are at 910. Last time I checked, hey, new goal. We're striving for that 1,000 subscribers. Help us get to that 1K. Share the podcast with any friends you listen to, anything like that. We are your everyday place and your everyday source for the Clemson Tigers. We are so appreciative for all of you, for our everydayers, giving their first listen here on the Locked On Clemson podcast. We also want to say this. We want to apologize. I know it's been a while. It's been about 9 days since we posted a podcast. We went on vacation. We went on a little beach trip with the family. I took the stuff to record some podcasts, but honestly, it was a smaller hotel room. We had a bunch of people in it, so I didn't want to have a bunch of background quality and release some stuff that it wasn't up to fit, wasn't quality that you all deserve. So we took a little break, but we are back, and now we are on the countdown. It is counting down the season, and so with all that being said, let's dive in. EA Sports is releasing finally. If you're a fan of the podcast, you know how excited we are about. They are finally releasing their new college football game, College Football 25. We are pumped for it. We can't wait. We are so excited about what's going on. We're so excited about what's going to happen. We talked about one time they released their first rankings of the toughest places to play, and Clemson scored way low on that. Scored I think they were 14th on it. They were low on it, and it was disappointing. We talked about that. Well, now they've released three more rankings. They've released their overall college football 25 team rankings. They released their overall defensive rankings, and they've released their offensive rankings. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with where we landed. I'm pretty happy about the spot they have us in, the spot that they have us on the point. So let's jump into it. First, let's look at the offensive team rankings. All right. So our offensive team rankings, we're going to go through. They released their top 25. We're just going to read them through real quick. Number 1 is Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Miami, Colorado, Missouri, and Clemson falls in at 10th. I'll be very honest. I am so surprised they have us all the way up at 10th. I am so surprised that they have Clemson Tigers offense at 10. Do I think we're a top 10 caliber offense? I 100% think we could be. I 100% think that we have that potential. We have that availability to get to that high. But nobody's given that respect. Like, nobody, except for Clemson fans and a couple unbiased reporters, are giving Clemson that. And I understand why they're not giving the respect of a top 10 caliber. I mean, when you think about it, Clemson is a team that went from 70 or the third best QBR rating from 2016 to 2020 to the past 3 years the 73rd QBR ranking. Plus, you have offensive line struggles. You have our wide receivers have been a little inconsistent. We have a running back room questionable with Will Shipley leaving. There's all kind of doubts that people could have. We don't have these, but there's all kind of doubts that people could have when it comes to college football, when it comes to the Clemson Tigers offense. But EA didn't have any of those. EA came out and was like, "Hey, we believe in the Clemson Tigers. We're gonna put them 10th." I know if you look at the overall rankings, 10th through 16th are all tied at 87 overall, with Clemson, Utah, Penn State, Ole Miss, Kansas, Arizona, and NC State are all tied at 87th, but they do have Clemson up there at the highest of the group. Some are like, "Oh, it's alphabetically." No, it's not, because Utah is 11th, where Arizona is 15th. No, that's not how it is. But overall, I think it's pretty great. I think Clemson being at 10th, I think it's a good spot. I don't think if you look at the offenses above us, it makes sense why we're there at this point. I think we could move to that point. We could get to that level. But we're definitely a team that's carried by our defense. And so us being at 10th offense is pretty solid. Now, mentioning defense, they did release their overall defensive rankings for teams. And here's how the top 10 look for there. Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, and then Clemson falling in at the 5th spot. I really like that. This team is a team that is going to be carried by their defense. It was last year, so many games, and it will be this year. It is a team that is definitely led by the defense. And so the fact that we're 5th in the nation, I think is 100% accurate. I think we have the best linebacker core in the nation. We are always competitive with the best or top 3 defensive line. Our secondary unit is going to be stout this year. I love this ranking. I think it's a good fit. Ohio State has the number 1 put. They're at 96 overall. Georgia's at 94. And then 3rd through 7th are all tied at 90, with Clemson falling in at the middle of that. Oregon, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Michigan are tied at 90, but Clemson falls in that 5th spot. And I love it. I think this spot is accurate. I definitely think that we have the best defense in the ACC, hands down. The best offense, I don't know. There's questionable there, which is why I'm not upset with Miami being ranked above us on the offensive rankings. We are the second highest offense, but NC State's tied with us overall, but below her. Florida State came in like 22nd, I believe, 22nd. They came with an 83. Virginia Tech came in at 24th. SMU's up there with an 85 at 20th. So there's different teams in the ACC up there, but Clemson's the second best, with Miami has an overall of 89, Clemson at 87 offense. Defense, we're the highest. We're 90. Notre Dame is also in 90. Florida State comes in at 11th with an 88. Virginia Tech 86 at 14. North Carolina at 23rd with 84. And so there's the offense and there's the defensive rankings. I love the spot. Honestly, I agree with them. I think we're a top 10 offense. I think we're a top 3 defense personally. When you're looking at that defensive rating, they have us at a 5th. And I know some of you are arguing like, really, you're arguing with them? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I think we have a better defense than Alabama. I think we have a better defense than Oregon. I would put us at 3rd, Ohio State, Georgia, then Clemson. But they have us at 5th, and again, I'm not going to get upset over 2 spots. That we're 5th, top 5, 100%. Offense, top 10, I would agree with that. I think that's a good ranking for us. I think 5 is too high for us, especially where we are right now. And Utah, Penn State, Ole Miss, Kansas, Arizona are the 5 schools that are behind us in the offensive side. I don't know if any 5 of them have a definitely star power offensive talent better than Clemson. So I like the ranking there. When it goes over to the overall team rankings for this coming game, we're going to start at 25, read off all these. 25 is Iowa, then Oklahoma State, Arizona, Kansas. NC State is 21st. Virginia Tech is 20th. Then USC, that's Southern California, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Colorado, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Miami falls at 13. Florida State falls at 12. Michigan, Utah, Penn State, LSU, Notre Dame. And then your Clemson Tigers fall at 6 with a 90 overall. Texas, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia is the number 1 overall team with a 95. That makes sense. When you look at the offensive rankings, Georgia's number 1. When you look at defensive rankings, they're number 2. Ohio State's 1 defense, 5 to offense. It makes sense why they're up there. I like the spot. I think 6 overall is a good spot for us. If you look at the polls, if you look at prediction, you look at all that, that's not where Clemson is ranked at 6. But overall, I think it's a good spot. I think it shows respect. It shows that they're respecting Clemson's past as well as their potential. So I love it. I love their rankings. They made up for the home field advantage rankings that came out earlier on. I love it. Let us know your spots. Drop a comment. Hit us up on X or Twitter. Let us know your thoughts about where they have us. In just a minute, we're going to keep this football conversation going as we continue our series recapping games from last year, talking about what it's showing us for this year and the needs for this year. So we're going to keep that going with our recap of Wake Forest from last year. We will see you in just a second. MLB is in full swing, and very little is better than game day at Clemson University, but MLB games are right up there with them. I love going to different ballparks and feeling the vibe and the energy of the stadium, and my go-to place for MLB tickets is the Gametime app. Gametime is an authorized ticket seller for all MLB games, and they're the easiest place to go to for all your ticket needs. Whether it's in advance or the day of, prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Braves playing decent. Padres, my team, are playing really well. I love going to see some games, and Gametime is the best place to get those tickets to see them live. Some of my favorite things about Gametime are I love the fact you get up to 60% off when you're buying last-minute tickets. I also love the fact that every single seat you can see beforehand in a panoramic view, so you can see exactly what you're going to expect during the game. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with the Gametime app. Download it now. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. The rules and terms apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. Hey, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all of you. Again, we are on that road to 1,000 subscribers. We're pushing for that. Make sure you help us out with that. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Share it with another follower. Let's post this. Let's keep pushing and growing this fan base, this amazing culture, this amazing community of the Locked On Clemson podcast. So moving on in the show, we are in the middle of this series where we go through and I'm watching every single game from last year, and I'm diving in and I'm looking in a spot not of what the team was from last year, but looking in a spot of what this game means for the team this year. I'm looking at it as a point of what is this team, what is the games, what's the results, what's the game style, what's the plays, what's happening in this games from last year that can reflect on what we need for this year, can reflect on what we need to be for the upcoming season. And so we've walked through 5 or 6 games so far. We are now at Game 7 against Wake Forest from last year. This game was a close one. This game was one that was yeah, I remember watching it, and it made me sick. But just going over the scoring real quick, started off a very slow-scoring game. There was Clemson had a fumble very early on, a fumble that we saw multiple times last year between a handoff between Cade Klubnik and Will Shipley. Something about their chemistry last year was off. They fumbled a lot on a handoff, whether it was Cade holding the ball out too long, can't decide if he's handing off or keeping it, or Will Shipley not grasping it fully, or miscommunication. There was blame on both sides. This one was on Cade Klubnik's fault, but he definitely fumbled the ball in deep in opponent's territory. Wake Forest got the ball in the first quarter, but our defense stepped up and we stopped them. Not only did we not give up a touchdown, we didn't give up a point. They didn't score right there, but we got the ball back, didn't do anything, punted out of the end zone. They got the ball back. They scored first with 2 minutes left in the first quarter with a 35-yard field goal. Early on in the second quarter, we finally scored. Cade Klubnik had a little 7-yard run, and he did a little finger roll layup as he to celebrate his touchdown. But he scored early on in the second quarter. Nothing else happened till later in the third quarter. Jonathan Whites kicked a 25-yard field goal for Clemson to go up 10-3. Later on in the third quarter, Matthew Dennis for Wake Forest had another field goal, made it 10-6. And then later on, Will Shipley Cade Klubnik still could not create a rhythm, still could not get into it. But finally, Will Shipley just put us on his back, and he rushed down the whole field, scored on a 1-yard run later on after rushing for a lot of yards on that drive. Put us up 17-6. With 1:34 left, Wake Forest scored, made it 17-12, went for the 2-point conversion. Their wide receiver made an excellent catch, but he had a toe on the line, which did not give him the 2-point conversion. Went for the onside kick. We got it easily, and we won. So we won this game 17-12, which would bring our record to 4-6. Wake Forest is the 4-2. Wake Forest is the 3-2. Overall, this game, it was not an encouraging game. it was not one that it was like, what are we doing? It was on defense. Offense was like, what's happening? It felt like Cade Klubnik just never got a rhythm. It felt like he was making some bad reads. There was multiple times where he would have a little read option play, or he'd have like his first option would be a little halfback screen that was running out, or he could throw it deep and he'd fake it to the screen, then he wouldn't have anybody open deep, so he'd run it and it just wouldn't work. There was multiple times he made very bad reads. He would try to hand it off when he should have ran it. He would run it when he should have passed it. He made some poor reads, and even in the passing game, he really couldn't get momentum going. He ended up going 18 for 28 with only 131 rush yards or 131 passing yards. So did not have a great game there. Did not have a great passing game. It was a little disappointing, a little unencouraging. Hated to see that for sure. Hated to see that happening, but overall, it led us to the win. He still won. It definitely what helped us for sure was our rushing game. When you look at our rush yards, Will Shipley had 19 carries for 97 yards with 1 touchdown. Phil Maffa, 9 carries for 63 yards, 7 yards a rush. Pretty good there. Cade Klubnik, 12 carries for 48 yards. All their longest was Will and Phil. Both had a 21-yarder. Cade had an 11-yarder. Hamp Green had one carry for 1 yard. But overall, rushing game definitely carried it for us. We had over 200 yards rushing on the game. When you look at our receivings, we had a couple decent games. There was only one receiver with 50 yards plus. Bo Collins had 5 receptions for 50 yards. Jake Brending still had 5 receptions for 30 yards. He had an amazing catch. It was like I think it was 2nd and 8. And Cade Klubnik threw a terrible pass, but he lays out, catches the ball on his fingertips while he's diving on the ground, 2 inches above the ground, but gets it to completion, all for a gain of like 4 yards. But he had a great game, or he had a decent game, 5 receptions, 30 yards. Tyler Brown had 3 receptions, 22 yards, with one of them coming for 15. Troy Stellato, 2 receptions, 10 yards. And then he had 3 people with 1 reception each. Phil Maffa, Sage Enos, and Will Shipley. No throwing touchdowns on the day, but he didn't have an interception, so that's good. He didn't throw a pick. He did have a lost fumble, but no worries. Clemson did have 2 fumbles on the day. Tyler Brown fumbled 1, lost it. Cade Klubnik also fumbled 1 and lost it. But we did recover a fumble. R.J. Mickens recovered a fumble there on a big strip by the second after completion. But overall, it was great. Defensively, we were led by Mickens, had 9 total tackles, 1 for a loss, had a total of 8 total tackles for loss. So love to see that. This game, the encouraging part, and we'll talk about this quickly because we say it so much when it comes to last year, our defense carried us. Our defense prevented them to only having 2 field goals and a touchdown, 12 points on the day, led their passing yards to 137 passing yards, 102 rush yards on the day. Overall, only gave up 239 yards of gain from Wake Forest. Had a great game. Forced a turnover. They had the ball. They had their backs to the ball a bunch of times. They'd come in and Wake Forest would be about to score. They'd get the ball in great field goal position, and our defense would stop them. There was multiple times our defense carried us this game. If it wasn't for them, we would have lost this game. There's no way we would have won this game if it wasn't for our defense. As many times as Wake Forest had the ball, as many times as their offense was on the field, our defense stepped up. And what does that show us? We'll go back to the first session. It shows us our defense is one of the best in the nation. Yeah, we lost some pieces, but we replaced them with even more. We had more ready for the depth chart. It's exciting to happen. Our defense is going to be our strong point this year. This game proves that. All the games last year honestly proves that. Unless Cade Klubnik just comes out and is like Heisman caliber, our defense is going to be our strong point. Our defense is going to carry us, and that's good. Our defense is great. Now we just need our offense to play enough where our defense doesn't have to have 99% of the pressure. The biggest things that see from last year, from this game that we need to make sure we do this game in this coming year, we can't have the turnovers. Will Shipley and Cade Klubnik have got to figure out how to hand the ball off, have got to figure out how they can connect up better, a little bit better with each of them, making better progress and not fumbling the ball. None of those stupid fumbles that are unforced just between a handoff. That's the problem. If you get hit for a really hard tackle and fumble the ball there, no worries. That happens, right? But if you get hit and you go up for a catch and you come down and get blindsided, you fumble it there. Again, no worries. That's part of football. But the fumbles that happens between a handoff, the play that they teach you in Pee Wee football, how to hand the ball off to a running back, those fumbles are the one that kill us. And it happened multiple times last year, one in this game. That can't happen. That cannot be an option. That's got to stop. Clemson's got to stop that moving forward. Another thing that got to happen, there was multiple times we went for it on fourth down and field goal range because our field goal kicker still can't be trusted. We've got to fix that. We've got to come out and have a better place kicker. That was something throughout the year. So this game showed us, one, our defense is great. Two, we've got to limit turnovers, limit those stupid fumbles. And three, got to have a place kicker we can trust. When we come back, we're going to switch conversations up a little bit. PJ Hall's in the NBA. Hopefully he'll see some time in the NBA, not just G League. But we'll talk about that and so much more in just a moment. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Switching subjects here just a little bit. Still talking about Clemson because this is Locked On Clemson. We're always talking about Clemson. But we are switching up sports a little bit. Hey, sorry I keep messing with my glasses. Side note, I know looking at the camera, they look fake. It looks like it's a filter. They're here. I know they're huge. My wife calls them my Ed Nimona glasses from The Incredibles. They are massive. Fun fact, make sure you do the test on when you buy online glasses. If not, you get glasses that take up half your face. But, fun stuff. But they're a little too big. That's why I keep pushing them up. But anyway, again, moving forward, before we jump into this last segment, we do want to let you know we got some exciting things coming. We are less than 2 months away from football. Yeah. Let's just celebrate. Let's just celebrate that. That's amazing. Less than 2 months away from kickoff in Atlanta against Georgia. We can't wait for that game. Going to be great. Before kickoff happens, we've talked about it a little bit. We're still working on it. We are putting together a Discord where we are going to create a Discord chat and group server for this Locked On podcast where we can have a couple things. We're going to be able to hop on there and give you some updates, just give you some different updates on, hey, transfer just released. We just landed this transfer. Or, hey, we just found out that this player's transferring out. Or, hey, this basketball player's transferring in, right? I noticed I said basketball transferring in because we all know we're not getting a football transfer. But yeah, so that Discord's going to happen. That's one aspect. We'll also have an aspect. We'll have a live game chat. So during the games, we can hop on there and chat together. Everybody can just blow it up. Big play happens. Let's celebrate together. Let's talk together throughout that game. You never know, if y'all have some good stuff on there, probably presented up here on the podcast. But they'll have other aspects as well, such as questions. If you have any questions you want addressed on the podcast, you can send them on there. So be on the lookout in the next coming weeks for that Discord channel. We can't wait to get that drawing up and running, going well there. Well, as football continues, as we get closer in this offseason, getting closer to kickoff, we are going to be going through and we're going to be continuing on in this series, talking about recapping our games from last year, recapping what we go through. We're going to go through an updated positional rankings. Now that we've seen the summer happen, now that we've seen players progress, where's our positions ranking, where's positions players happening, going through that. We're going to go through an updated roster prediction with maybe a guest star up here on the podcast, walking through predictions for the ACC. We're going to have a bunch of football content, so make sure you continue joining us every single day here on the Locked On Clemson podcast for your everyday news, your first place to listen for anything Clemson sports related. But let's finish up the episode with this. This year, we had the potential for something amazing to happen. We had the potential for the first time since the 90s to have back-to-back years with a Clemson player being drafted in the NBA draft. We had a chance. It was going to happen. Every mock draft said it was going to happen. Every single place you looked said it was going to happen. It was locked in stone. PJ Hall was going to get drafted. Last year, Hunter Tyson did win the Nuggets in the second round. This year, PJ Hall was going to get drafted in the second round. Night one came. We didn't hear PJ Hall's name. All right, no worries. That's fine. What's going to happen now? Night two came, and we didn't hear PJ Hall's name. Bummer. I was so ticked. I was so mad we didn't see his name. I planned on doing a podcast right after the draft launched and just release a bonus episode highlighting where he went, but he didn't get drafted. Why in the world did he not? This draft was a really weird draft. We saw players fall from the first round that was potentials at one time to be a top 10 pick. We saw players jump into the first round. We saw one or two that was on the borderline of not getting drafted, and they went in the first round. This draft was so weird and unpredictable that nobody got it right. Nobody called it. Nobody had every expectation called. There was so many surprises, and I know draft night comes with surprises. That's a part of it, but this one had so many that it was hard to understand, hard to see what really happened. But PJ Hall was one of them. He was projected to go late in the second round. He did not get drafted. I think it's because so many of those good players went late in this, or went in the second round instead of the first, that it kind of just threw up everybody. But there was some good news. There is some good news out of this, and it is this, that PJ Hall will be returning and reuniting with Hunter Tyson, his good friend, his good buddy from Clemson that got drafted last year. He's going to the Nuggets with Hunter Tyson. I'm a Nugget fan. I'm a Denver Nugget fan. I have been since Ty Lawson. If you're an ACC basketball fan, you remember Ty Lawson, point guard for Carolina, so many years ago when he got drafted to the Nuggets. I've always been a Clemson fan, but I had a soft spot for Ty Lawson. I really enjoyed watching him. When he made it to the league, I stuck with the Nuggets, and since then I've been a Nuggets fan. Chauncey Billups, Carmelo Anthony, back in the true days, Kenyon Martin, right? Kenneth Faried, Birdman. Those days. I was a Nuggets fan then, and it just happened that my favorite college, Clemson, had a player drafted by him last year, which I was pumped about. Hunter Tyson didn't see a lot of playing time last year, spent most of his time in the G League, but he had a good year in the G League last year. I mean, honestly, he had a really successful year. He spent a lot of times with the Grand Rapids Gold. He averaged 23.8 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. So he had a really good season. He is on a two-way contract. He saw a little bit of time in the NBA, but hardly any. He had a great year in the G League, really high for his potential. There's a lot of chance Hunter Tyson's going to play in the NBA. PJ Hall, he's in the NBA. He's on a two-way contract. He's signed with Denver. What does that mean? Well, it means this. It means they have faith in him, but they need to see some growth. And so really quickly, we're just going to hit some areas PJ needs to grow in. Number one, he's got to be able to grow in his three-point shooting. The modern-day game hardly has any big men that don't shoot threes, especially if you're only 6'9", 6'10", especially if you're PJ Hall size, a little undersized. With his size, he's a little undersized for a big man, especially physically, so he's got to be able to hit threes. And last year he shot 30% from the three. That's not going to cut it. You've got to be able to shoot over 40%. He hit that 40% junior year. We got to see that better, so he's got to see more there. He's also got to get a little bit more athletic on defense. I don't mean athletic vertically. He's got the vertical ability. He can block shot. I think he'd be a good rim protector. He's got to get the sideways athletic ability up. He's got to get that versatility going where he can get side to side, cover the lanes, cover off ball, move with the guard if he gets stuck on a switch. That's the part he's got to improve. And then rebounding. He's got to show just because of size, he can still pull down some rebounds. If he can improve in those three areas, he's definitely going to make an impact in NBA. Denver right now needs a good backup center, a backup four, and I definitely think that can be PJ Hall. Hunter Tyson coming in. I'm just excited to be able to watch the Grand Rapids Gold. I'm going to get deeper in the G League than I ever have because PJ Hall and Hunter Tyson are going to be playing some minutes together, and I cannot wait to see these two reunited. So, draft day, disappointing that PJ's name wasn't called, but honestly, I wouldn't have picked a different team. If you listen to our last predictions, we predicted he would go to the Nuggets in the draft. We were half right. We got the team right, which is harder. We did not get the draft right, though. So, yeah, it's exciting. Disappointing for the draft. Really exciting about the future. So we can't wait. We're going to monitor that throughout the season. We'll give you some random segments throughout the podcast of updates on how Hunter Tyson's doing as well as PJ Hall. But with all that being said, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Later this week, we're going to dive more into football discussions as we talked about as we're getting closer and closer to the opening kickoff. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics, though. Reach out to us over on Twitter, X, at I am John Bivens, or the Tiger Wire, or you can email us over at thetigerwire@gmail.com. You can drop a comment on YouTube. We would love to hear your feedback on everything we've talked about. And if you haven't, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcast at. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit that subscribe. We're on a road to 1,000 subscribers over there. Help us out. That'd be huge if you could subscribe, share it with other Clemson fans that you know. That way, every single day, this can be your first listen here on the Locked On Clemson podcast. We can't wait to see you on tomorrow on the next episode of the podcast. But until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.